One of the most common questions you'll get asked in a conversation about gaming is, what's your favorite game of all time? If you're watching this video or have watched any of my other videos, I'm sure you'll have had your answer to this question. It's a pretty simple question to ask and answer to, but then there's the why. I want everyone who's listening currently to answer that question, but sit on it and think thoroughly. What is my favorite game, and why is it my favorite game? What qualities do you look for in a game? What pulled you into your favorite game? Growing up, I never really thought much about this question, or any of the questions I just asked. As a matter of fact, I didn't really have a favorite game. My first 4 consoles I played were the Wii, DS, PS3, and Nintendo 64, and with that I had a handful of games I enjoyed playing alongside them. I generally say the standout games of my early childhood were Super Mario Sluggers, Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and Call of Duty Black Ops 2. Despite playing these and many other games constantly, I never really considered any of them to be my favorite. I have my connections and moments with each game, like the amount of copies I've gone through of Sluggers and Brawl because the disc and the reader wouldn't work, or the time I went over to my friend's house and tried to stay alive as long as we could on Town and Zombies. As I kept getting older, I'd play more games and would garner more memories and moments with them, but that special game was still missing. I could lie and say a random game, or maybe I thought it was the game that I played the most, but nothing resonated with me as the favorite game. That was until I was at school one day in early 2015. I was on the playground. I know this is a terrible thing considering the game we're talking about today, but just follow with me. I was on the playground talking with one of my friends. Me and her were just chilling on the slides when she mentioned to me this new game she just got, and it was called Bayonetta 2. She told me the general premise of the game, how it came with the first game, and how cool it made her feel to have the game. Naturally, my interest grew, and after I went home I opened my laptop and searched up the game, where I was greeted to a trailer for the first 2 games, and from that moment I was hooked. Bayonetta, originally releasing in January of 2010 for the PS3 and Xbox 360, is the product of Platinum Games and series producer Hideki Kamiya, who previously worked on the Devil May Cry series as the director. The development team behind Bayonetta is Team Little Angels, a play on the development team of the Devil May Cry series named Team Little Devils. I hadn't heard much about Platinum Games, but knew I wanted to check out their titles. I asked my parents to get me the game, and to my surprise, they did. I mentioned this in a previous video, but my parents were always fine with me playing mature games, as they trusted me to differentiate what's a game versus real life. Anyways, back to the game. I got the game, but it was only the second one, as my copy didn't come with a code or any promotion for the first game. I played the game up to Chapter 5, but loved every part to it. This will be a trilogy of videos, with the second video being about Bayonetta 2, so I'll keep my thoughts on that for when the video rolls around, but just know I thought very highly of it. In fact, I thought so highly of it that I was considering deeming it my favorite game of all time. Later on in the year, the final Super Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS presentation was held, in which series creator Masahiro Sakurai would reveal the final fighters for the game, with one of them being the winner of the Super Smash Bros. Fighter ballot. This was something I was eagerly awaiting for months to find out the results. I voted for the Inkling to make it in, which would wind up happening in the next installment, but regardless, I was hyped to see who it was. When that snowy December day appeared, I turned on the presentation to find out that Bayonetta was the winner of the ballot. I remember a lot of people being upset and the controversy that would come with not only Bayonetta's inclusion in Smash Bros, but the legitimacy of the ballot altogether. But neither of those really mattered to me. I was hyped to see one of my favorite characters get into the game, and I knew I'd pick her up day one, which I ended up doing alongside Corrin. Between my original playthrough of Bayonetta 2 on Wii U, and her inclusion in Smash, it was starting to become clear that maybe this franchise was in contention for that favorite spot. This would only be furthered in 2018 with the ports of Bayonetta 1 and 2 on the Nintendo Switch. I got the game for my birthday in March, but again there was something missing. My copy came from Amazon, and while it arrived sealed, it was missing the code and promotion for 1 entirely. This is honestly before I knew how returns worked and how Amazon's little game selling, it's low-key scammed up by from Amazon. So I didn't really bother with it, as I was too busy enjoying playing 2 to really notice. I would actually be surprised one day, as I was bored and rummaging through my PS3 games when I stumbled upon a copy of Bayonetta sitting there. I was astonished that the game I've been trying to play for so long was just sitting there in my house the whole time. To be honest, while I loved 2, it felt like I wasn't getting the full experience by not playing 1. But now I finally had the opportunity to play the game. I didn't play the game. So I did some research on my own and found out that the PS3 version is just hot ass, so I wasn't really into the idea of playing a game that was technically lesser than the sequel that I had played. Now I could have just bought the game on the Wii U, but I guess that didn't occur to me. Additionally, I was getting a new PC and Octo expansion was releasing in the summer of 2018, so I wasn't too concerned with playing 1 at the moment. However, it was said new PC that would allow me to access Steam. Me and my dad shared a Steam account together, and he'd let me use his account in some of the games on there to test out my PC. He'd also buy me a few games I was interested in, like the Assassin's Creed franchise or Pac-Man Championship Edition 2, but the first game I ever got for that account that was for me was Bayonetta. It was during the Steam Winter Sale, and the game was only listed for around $5 or so. I couldn't believe the game was listed that low, so I asked my dad and he bought it for me. Now was finally the moment I was able to play the game. Every reason I fell in love and enjoyed the game so much was only further backed by it running smoothly on PC with better graphics. It was probably one of the best gaming experiences I've ever had, to be honest. I promise I'll get into why I love this game so much, as that's the whole point of the video. But I do want to jump ahead in time in the story one last time, 2020. I chose to mention this last part because this was the year I fully figured out what my favorite game of all time was. It wouldn't be the second game, but it would in fact be the first. In 2020, Platinum Games would re-release Bayonetta alongside Vanquish in the 10th anniversary bundle for PS4 and Xbox One. My family had also recently gotten a new 4K TV and Xbox One S for our living room, so I thought it was the perfect time to get the game and experience it in the best way it could be. I got the game for my birthday, and on that very same day the entire world was shutting down. March 11th, 2020 was a historic day, as it was not only my birthday, but when the virus had been strong enough to send us into quarantine. At the time, like most kids in school, I was excited as this was a nice 2 weeks to play video games. While the quarantine would extend itself much longer, over the next month I'd work my way towards beating Bayonetta again, and this playthrough is what solidified Bayonetta as my favorite game of all time. From that point on, I'd usually make it a goal to play through the game once a year, and have so far. But now with all the backstory out of the way, there's only one question that remains. Why is Bayonetta my favorite game of all time? Now is finally the time I get to speak about the game, and in the proper fashion I feel it deserves. I was thinking of all the ways I could share why I love this game, but to me there were 3 reasons that stood out to me more than any. The story, the gameplay, and design. Naturally, I'll be sharing my personal experiences with each of these reasons as well. I feel it's best to have the story serve as the first reason to accustom everyone watching with the game. So here's the story of Bayonetta. The game follows Bayonetta, sometimes referred to by her birth name Cereza, in the fictional European city of Vigrid. Bayonetta herself is the product of an Umbran witch and a Lumen sage, 2 factions who are forbidden from creating a being together, as it's stated in law that, quote, the intersection of light and dark will bring calamity into this world. Her mother Rosa, who on her own was one of the most skilled Umbran witches of her time, was imprisoned as a result of this lawbreak. She, along with her partner Balder, who is a Lumen sage, were also seen as reason behind starting the clan wars, with the Lumen Sages and the Angels of Paradiso falling short to the Umbran Witches and Infernal Demons of Inferno. What would follow the clan war was the witch hunts. One of these hunts would cause Rosa injury and speculation that it was her lover from the Lumen Sages responsible for the action, though Balder would later tell her that he was tricked into enabling the act by Paradiso for their gain. Sensing an attack was soon on him, she took cover of him, though would succumb to her injuries and pass away, asking him to protect Cereza prior to death. Cereza and best friend Jean enter to her mother lying dead on the floor and would thus lose her will to fight. In order to protect Cereza and the left eye of the world she possessed, Jean would seal her away to ensure that Paradiso could not obtain the left eye. The left eye and right eye, known together as the eyes of the world, are key elements into understanding not just the background of the clans, but to the main plot point of the game. The left eye of darkness belongs to Umbran witches, while the right eye of light belongs to the Lumen Sages, being held by Balder. They're desired by all factions to achieve power for their own means. While the creation of the world is not known, the creation of the eyes comes from the god of chaos, Aesir, citing his displeasure with the human world and wanting them to have the ability to oversee and determine their future. You learn more about him in the second game, so I'll save his story for then. But now we return to Bayonetta, who has awoken after a 500-year slumber, seemingly with no memories of the past. Despite her having no knowledge of the past for the moment, she's aware that she possesses the left eye and that she is able to traverse between Paradiso, the place of angels, and Chaos, the home of humans, though unable to traverse Inferno, home of the demons. Her informant Enzo tells Cereza of a rumor about the right eye being located in Vigrid, with various angels attempting to kill her during to and while in Vigrid. Along the way, she encounters Jean, who she doesn't recognize due to the memory loss. She believes that Jean is somehow related to angels, which causes a fight between the two. Afterwards, Bayonetta encounters Luca, a childhood friend turned journalist who is out for revenge following the death of his father, believing Cereza to be responsible. She also encounters a child version of herself, also named Cereza, who believes Bayonetta to be her mom and follows her and Luca around as they travel to Isle de Sol. Over the course of the game, Bayonetta begins to remember her memories, as well as the events that lead up to the game. She discovers that her and Jean are the last 2 Umbran witches alive following a mass extinction done by the Lumen Sages and Angels of Paradiso. She learns of the events by Aesir mentioned prior that create the eyes of the world, and also learns of the event known as the First Armageddon, an event that causes the once single realm of Paradiso, Inferno, and Chaos to be split into 3 respectively. The trio arrive to Ethavol Tower, where Cereza has one last fight with Jean. It's there that she is able to have Jean remember her and their friendship, while also being told the reasoning behind her holding the left eye is due to her accepting her fate. Jean sacrifices herself in order to save Bayonetta and has her continue through the tower in hopes of coming in contact with the right eye. It's at the top of the tower where Bayonetta meets Baldur, who reveals a lot of key details to the player and to Bayonetta. He reveals himself to not only be Bayonetta's father, but that he is the holder of the right eye of light as well, and that Bayonetta, who is in possession of the left eye, needs to awaken it by regaining her memories, which he did by bringing a past version of herself, which would be little Cereza, into her life. His desire is to reawaken Jubilius the Creator, who is the ruler of Paradiso, as that will allow for him to reunite the 3 realms of Paradiso, Inferno, and Chaos. When confronted by Luca, it's revealed that Baldur was the one responsible for the death of his father before attempting to kill Luca while subsequently admitting to mind-controlling Jean. This prompts Bayonetta to fight Baldur, in which he seemingly gets killed, though at the cost of her actions altering the events of 500 years ago and causing her to be severely weakened. It's here that Baldur returns, proving to be alive following the fight, and begins his resurrection of Jubilius, though a returning Jean saves Bayonetta from consumption by Jubilius, allowing for Bayonetta to summon Queen Sheba, who punches the deity's soul into the sun, while the duo of Jean and Bayonetta destroy the body. That's essentially the game's plot, and I think it's a perfect introduction to the franchise in both a casual and hardcore way. The game on a surface level has an easy to follow story for casual players, but there's also plenty of chance throughout the game to delve deeper into the world for hardcores, and I think that's what's so perfect about it for me. You don't have to be bombarded with a heavy story, nor do you have to be handed a basic story. There's an equal chance for both kinds of player, and that's not something I see much in any game. The amount of lore, especially for it being the first game in the series, is truly incredible, and I grew a real attachment to the characters and world. I've always loved mythology stories, ever since I was young. 2 of my favorite stories of all time, the story of Icarus and Daedalus and the original star-crossed lovers, are both stories of this nature. With Icarus, it's the perspective of balance. He's warned not to fly too close to the sun, as it will melt his wings, while also not delving too close to the waters, as it will dampen his wings. The story can teach a lot of things, but for me, I hold it closely because it emphasizes the importance of balance. Don't fly too close to the sun and get careless, but don't keep yourself low and held back, as it will drown you out. In another word, balance. I tend to always keep this word, the story, and its meaning to me in my life some way or another, whether it's my tattoos of the sun and moon, or just in remembering. As for the star-crossed lovers, while it's not outright mythology and more of a term derived from a story, it likewise shares the same sentimental meaning as Icarus does for me, in that 2 people who are in love cannot be because of fate, and the positions of the stars has always struck me. The desire of love is one I too hold close, also resembled by that same tattoo and remembrance. So it's here with Bayonetta that the themes of mythology, more so being able to create ones of their own, that was one of the reasons the game gravitated towards me quickly. In conclusion of this point, it's the option of having a deep story if you're willing to look out for it, or having a light one if you're not. In addition to the overall just good story and world building, that makes it one of the reasons why I love this game. Growing up in a family that played games was one of the best gifts I got. It allowed me to experience all kinds of different genres. My mom, while not being as into games as the rest of us, loved puzzle games. Games like Professor Layton or Brain Age were ones I remember her playing when I was a kid, and it was a genre that I'd grow fond of playing various puzzle games like Captain Toad or Tetris later in life. My sister loved platforms like Sonic and Mario games, which to nobody's surprise me as a child would get invested into as well. And then my dad loved playing online games, notably World of Warcraft and Call of Duty. The latter I'd be heavily into as a kid. In the ways it was a sweet gift, it was equally as funny a gift that I'd end up not playing the other genres they were into. My mom was also into mobile games, which I never really got sucked into outside of Fire Emblem Heroes. My sister wouldn't really expand her horizons with games until she got older, so she was kind of limited to platformers, and with her being a Sonic fan in the late 2000s to mid 2010s, well, you know, a lot of those games are just shit. And then my dad, a big RPG fan. Really funny that I'm his son because... Such shit. Ah, fuck.
Dragon Quest?
Nobody gives a fuck. So anyways, this also led me to having to look at expanding horizons on my own. The genre I chose to gravitate towards was fighting games, though not just limited to Street Fighters and Marvel vs. Capcom. Included in this are beat-em-ups, hack and slashes, anything that involves some type of combat you have to learn, and that's not a Warriors game. One of the first unique games I remember playing was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in Time Reshelled for the PS3, which was a beat-em-up. I remember enjoying it a lot, even if I was never good. Then as I got older, playing fighting games where you have to learn combos and character movements to get good, it was always fun to me getting better, as I felt a genuine sense of progression when playing. This is why when I got to Bayonetta, the gameplay felt like second nature to me. Not to say that the gameplay of Bayonetta or hack and slashes in general are like a fighting game, but rather the premise of combining button presses into beautiful combos felt right at home with me. The depth the game's combat can go into is surprisingly deep. With the ability to purchase moves to implement with halos, it allows for a player to add a surprisingly deep back, and I have some of the most over-the-top finishes out there. And then there's the casual aspect. As I mentioned, I first started playing this franchise when I was younger, so I obviously wasn't that good. I wasn't able to string crazy combos, and being honest, I didn't even know you could buy additional moves in the Gates of Hell. So I resorted to what any kid does, button mashing, and this game is equally button mash friendly. You don't have to be good at the game to enjoy the game and its combat. You can honestly button mash and spam the entire way through and still have just as good a time, and I think the game is special for that. It has this ability to please both casuals and hardcores. Additionally, I should mention that this game is no easy feat. There are mode selections, but it doesn't mean the game is a breeze the whole way through. It requires quick time thinking, dodging, reactive decision making. That's the core of the gameplay. It's a very polished game, something Platinum is quite known for. The errors made are usually on the player, not so much on any jank of the game. There are two gameplay segments I want to highlight in specific. First, Chapter 8's Route 666. About 90% of this chapter's gameplay is on a motorcycle, something the game didn't do prior or after. The curveball it throws at you is such a core memory of mine from my first playthrough, and it remains my favorite chapter not just in the game, but in the franchise as a whole. Then the other segment is the final boss, Jubilius. This is the best representation of what Bayonetta's gameplay is. Hectic, fast, visual, and most importantly of all, fun. For the last reason, I wanted to turn to something more broad. Depending on how you look at it, this could really be multiple reasons bundled into one, but I'm talking about the design. What I mean by design isn't just limited to visual, though we can start there. As I mentioned earlier, I love mythology. I also love the looks of hieroglyphs and ancient art. There's such a beauty to the art to me, though I haven't really been able to piece why. I feel the same about the designs in Bayonetta. I'm not really talking about the main characters, though I think those designs are all amazing. I'm talking specifically about the angels. The inspiration behind them is Judeo-Christian concepts, where angels were divine but monstrous beings. I love the rough but beautiful look. I think there's something unique and pretty about them. As I mentioned though, design isn't just limited to visuals. Sound is also considered in this category for me, specifically the music. The game has a hand from Sega, and if you know, then you know how consistent Sega soundtracks are. Bayonetta takes note of this and has one of the best soundtracks out there. There's jazz, angelic hymns, J-pop, orchestral music, and that doesn't even cover all the genres. There's usage of pianos, organs, chorus, flutes, guitars. It's a very expansive variety. My personal favorite track is the Gates of Hell shop theme. I'm a sucker for jazz and bossa nova music, and this track is partial reason why. From the moment I heard it when I was younger, I knew it was my favorite track. Other favorites of mine include Red and Black, Action, Splash Wave Climax Mix, The Angels Descend 2, Chapters Start and Clear, and Driving with Enzo. Additionally, the sound design in itself is also worth praising. The sound of the guns, the enemies, walking, even the coin jingle after completing an area is also smooth. Usually for games, I pay attention to just the music, but never really much to the environmental effects or any special effects of any kind. So I did want to give a nod to those sounds as well in this game, as they really do add to the experience. The Platinum coin jingle has been my notification sound on my phone ever since I got my first one back in 2016. So there it is. In my words, these were some reasons as to why this game is my answer to that question asked at the beginning of the video. The game evokes a magical feeling inside. This franchise and specifically this game have followed me in life from the moment I first laid eyes on it. I truly don't believe there will ever be a game that can replicate the feeling this game gives me. I've played a pretty solid amount of games and I've been able to take away something from every one of them. Some of them positive, some of them negative. When it comes to Bayonetta, it transcends any feeling with another game prior and after it. Every game has its flaws, and of course Bayonetta and the franchise are not immune to it. While we're going far ahead into the future of videos here, I have some very choice words about the third game in the franchise, but that's not this video. I can play it in any mood, any setting, and any time. There's a reason why I've replayed it about every year since the first time I played it. So, to end off this video, I just want to know two things from you watching this. One, of course, what you thought about the video, but two, to answer that question asked in the first moments of the video. What's your favorite game of all time? But this time, really sit and think on it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.